Welcome to the What's New and What's Next for Storage session here at Google Cloud Next 21. My name is Brian Schwartz, and I'm joined by my colleague here, Dave Nettleton. We're leaders in the product management team here for storage, and I'm excited to talk to you about the entire storage portfolio that Dave and I work on along with our colleagues. During the session today, we've broken it up into a few different sections. First, Dave's going to start with the strategy for Google Cloud Storage, and then we're going to run through the updates and what's new on a number of parts of the product line: cloud storage, file, persistent disk, and we'll end with some discussions about transfer and backup archive DR, as well as include a few links to where to find more information. With that, I want to turn it over to Dave to start a discussion about the strategy.
Thanks, Brian. So just at a very high level, I thought it'd be helpful to go through how we think about our strategy and the different parts of that. So, our goal is to deliver easy to use, performant, and highly available storage for all workloads with enterprise management, controls, and insights. This really guides how we think about both the portfolio of products that we have, but also the individual features within them. So at a high level, three main types of storage that we provide in the cloud: block, object, and file. We'll spend a little bit more time on each of these. These cover both cloud native and more traditional enterprise use cases. Together with those, we have capabilities for data transfer and data protection, which are very important services that come hand in hand often with storage. And then, as well as what we deliver in terms of first-party products from Google, we're very big believers in having an open ecosystem of partners here to give customers a range of choices for their workloads as they bring them to the cloud. Two big categories there would be in file and data protection. For file, we partner closely with NetApp, Dell EMC, and DDN. And for backup and DR, Commvault and Veeam are two of the partners who, amongst others, who we work with very, very closely. So let me dive in a little bit on some of the great enhancements that we've had in the products recently. So starting with our object storage product, cloud storage. So one of the great features in cloud storage, our object storage product, is the notion of dual regional storage. And what this does is it lets you manage data across two regions. So without this product, you need to put a bucket in each of two regions. Each of those buckets would have a different name. You'd have to separately deal with managing and copying data from one bucket to the other. If you had to deal with a disaster or you wanted to redirect traffic to read from one bucket or the other, you have to deal with failover and failback of those storage buckets. With dual regional storage, we provide a product that gives just a single bucket that spans those two regions. So resources in each of those regions, or indeed in other regions, can read data from that bucket, and we will manage behind the scenes the data placement. And we provide a single namespace that you can read and write to, so it's active from a read and write perspective. We provide strong consistency over that metadata of the bucket, and then in the background we move the data, replicate the data between the two regions. In the event of a failure in one of the regions, the application won't notice it continue to read the metadata that's consistent across these two regions, giving immediate failover to any activity that's happening in the other region. One of the big enhancements that we are announcing is that we're going to allow not just fixed name pairs, which is what we have today. We currently have a pair of regions in Asia, a pair of regions in the US, and a pair of regions in Europe. We're going to allow customers to specify the particular regions that they want to create a custom dual region across. So this is very powerful, being able to pair together a couple of regions and provide a single bucket that spans those two regions. Together with that, we also want to deliver a capability to give stronger guarantees around the recovery point objective. So we call this turbo replication, where we'll give an SLA of the data that is written on one side will be replicated to the other side within 15 minutes. So we'll provide an SLA back replication for the data in these dual regional buckets. Very excited about this in helping customers better support their business continuity needs and also managing their data across multiple regions. As well as that feature, some other enhancements from cloud storage that have happened recently. So multi-part uploads, this has been a very common feature ask from customers who are looking to use to make it easy to bring large objects to the cloud and construct them in parts and finalize them in the cloud. So this has been a very popular programmability feature. And then a category, the next three, all around security. So security is something we take very seriously. We work a lot with customers around their security needs. So we want to make sure that we support the various workloads that they have here through assured workloads, through providing tags, bucket level tags that let customers reason about their data through IAM policies and support certifications like FINRA with capabilities like bucket lock that let customers lock a bucket for an extended duration of time. And then another enhancement that we announced earlier in this year, it's relatively small but actually very powerful, is with Google Cloud Storage, we offer 4 classes of storage from hot all the way down to archive. And we let customers tier between that data for managing cost. It doesn't actually, all storage classes have the same API and the same fast access to data. So even the archive tier is online and instantly available. And customers want to tier between those storage classes for cost purposes. With a custom timestamp as part of the metadata, customers can now use that a measure of time to help them make decisions about when to tier data. So a powerful capability. Moving on from our object storage and cloud storage over to file storage, both from FileStor, our first-party product, and also with partners. So file storage is a huge use case for our customers, particularly customers coming from on-premises where they have built and rich and sophisticated workflows around enterprise file offerings, whether that's just as traditional file shares or as directories where they're putting shared executables as part of workflows, build pipelines, etc. So customers are looking, as they lift and shift to the cloud, to have a very powerful set of file capabilities. To date, we've had a file store product that's both a basic and a high scale. These have been zonal products, and we're really pleased to announce that we've launched FileStor Enterprise, which is a regional service, so it'll survive a zone failure. So we replicate data across multiple zones, so customers don't need to worry about that. They have a highly available regional service backed with a 4.9 SLA. And then we're also making sure that this is then well integrated with all of the other enterprise features that customers expect in the cloud, whether that's Stackdriver for logging or our security features like VPC service controls, VPN, interconnect to help customers set up the appropriate security perimeter around their infrastructure and have their file product be part of that. And we also want to make sure this is available through our console, CLI, nice and easy to use. And then in particular with GKE to help make it easy to provision and get file resources there, providing the CSI driver support to simplify that. So as well as FileStor Enterprise, some other enhancements for file that we've announced recently is backups for FileStor Basic. So FileStor Basic is our zonal product, and we delivered backups for that. FileStor High Scale is our high performance scale of FileStor, which lets customers scale to many tens of up to 100 terabytes of scale at much higher performance. And then as well as what we've been doing first party with FileStor, lots of enhancements through our partners, in particular with NetApp and Dell. And we're seeing a lot of customers having a lot of success with some of the workloads that they're bringing to the cloud with things like SMB workloads for Windows or media rendering and genomics. And with that, I'll hand back over to Brian to tell you all a little bit about Persistent Disk.
Thanks, Dave. So Persistent Disk is the block storage offering here in Google Cloud. It's often used with the compute engine VMs. It's probably the most common use case, but it's also used quite a bit with Kubernetes engine, GKE, for container workloads. And it's also used with Cloud SQL for the managed database offering. So pretty popular offering, bunch of different use cases. One of the new great features that we introduced recently is a new class of performance, extreme persistent disk. And it's really targeted at the highest performing workloads in your data center, particularly high end databases, SAP HANA being an absolutely classic example of this. In addition to great performance, another great feature it has is the ability to independently scale capacity and performance. So you can really tune, the cost and performance and capacity to really get the best TCO for your environment, just in the persistent disk volumes itself. It also includes easy to use snapshots, which can be used for like cloning use cases. So you could refresh test and dev environments and workflows similar to that. Um, and also, you can attach persistent disk volumes to any size VM. So again, it's another capability of flexibility. So you can really use the Google Cloud infrastructure to tune, the capabilities of the infrastructure to exactly what you need. So you don't pay for, maybe a really large VM just because you need really high performance storage. So again, just trying to give you all that flexibility. Dave mentioned security. It kind of exists kind of throughout our portfolio. Another classic example is here with persistent disk is the ability to have, of course, at-rest encryption and encryption in transit, and lots of flexibility in terms of how you manage the keys with, customer managed keys or customer supplied keys. And another thing we're really excited about is, these constant investments we make in the resiliency of our system. And extreme persistent disk has a 6 nines durability, which is a measure of how durable the storage is. It's really important that we invest in making these things available and durable for you. There's a number of other enhancements that we've had for persistent disk that expand beyond extreme PD. And the first one is probably a tie off to what I just talked about durability. We have a nice public blog posting we've done and inclusion in some more documentation for PD about the really leading durability guarantees that we have included in our services. Another service that we added earlier in the year was Balance PD. It's an SSD class storage, so it gives you good performance, not as good as Extreme PD, but at a much lower price point. And it's a really good offering for a lot of, I'll say, general purpose workloads in the cloud. People use them for boot disks, for test and dev databases. There's lots of reasons why these things are interesting, and it really gives you great IOPS at a lower price point. Also, with Balance PD is we have something we refer to as regional PD, which essentially is synchronous replication across the zones in a given region. This is a differentiated capability for Google Cloud, super powerful and important for those of you who basically need to protect against zone failures. And essentially, you're getting synchronous, writes across multiple regions. Used quite a bit with the Cloud SQL offering today to provide the highest levels of kind of availability for some of your important databases. And of course, along the same lines, increasingly investing in APIs to be able to deliver application consistent snapshots, which will really speed the recovery time if you need to, reinstantiate a database from a snapshot. Another small part of the block storage product line here is our local SSD offering. And you can think about this as a counterpoint to persistent disk that's really targeted at ephemeral or cache workloads. So locally attached to the VM, very high performance, very high IOPS, very low latency, really targeted at these caching workloads in memory databases where you need the absolute highest level of performance, but you don't need the persistence and, durability and the enterprise features that we have in persistent disk. So again, a nice addition to the product line earlier this year was the support for 9 terabyte local SSDs. And again, like I mentioned earlier, the ability to attach these to many sizes and shapes of VM, so you can really, again, tune performance with CPU, memory and storage performance, all being targeted at exactly what you need for your workload. And with that, I would like to turn it back over to Dave to talk about data transfer.
Thanks, Brian. So for data transfer, there's two major products in the portfolio that we have here, the transfer appliance and the transfer service. So starting out with transfer appliance, one exciting enhancement that we've had is to allow this to be available to customers in what we call a connected mode. So to date, we've had an appliance that ships to a customer's premises, either, for example, to move large amounts of data from a data center that they're migrating to the cloud, or increasingly we're seeing for capture at the edge use cases where for AI/ML workloads, there's a lot of data capture that might happen in the field. You want to gather a lot of that data and then bring it to the cloud. So we've had a transfer appliance to allow customers to capture that data and ship it to the cloud. Recently, we just announced that we'll actually allow this to operate in a connected mode. So you can actually drop data onto the appliance, and then over a network connection, it will move the data to the cloud on your behalf via that connection. So excited to see some of the use cases our customers will put this to. As well as the appliance, a lot of enhancements in the transfer service recently. Several here that I'll highlight. First of all, the transfer service API. So giving programmability control over transfers, we'll think will help customers much better integrate this into their various workflows. Agent pools is a capability we've added to the agent that is part of transfer service for on-premises. So this is something that is deployed into a compute resource and manages the transfer. With agent pools, we're now enabling those resources to be better managed across multiple transfer jobs and over a shared resource like a network link. So giving much more flexibility control over transfer. And then, more sources and sinks for the service. We've added support for Azure Data Lake v2, and for the appliance, we're adding more locations, with London being one that's recently announced. And with that, I'll hand back to Brian.
Thanks, Dave. For the last content section, I want to talk about backup, archive, and DR. And it's a really important area to make sure that you're protecting your data in all the different places it exists in Google Cloud. One of the new offerings that we just announced in September of 21 is a new offering focused on containers, Google Cloud GKE Backup. And what we've seen is an increasing number of customers running stateful workloads inside of containers, including very traditional databases. And as a result of that, we've been working on essentially a new service offering that's targeted at protecting the data inside these stateful containers. It has a nice orchestration built into it that essentially allows you to take regular PD snapshots to protect the data inside these stateful containers. And it gives you pretty flexible recovery options to recover individual containers as well as full clusters, both in the normal region where it was running, as well as potentially for a DR use case to reinstantiate it inside of another region. There is flexibility to basically manage your backup policies, scheduling, recurring snapshots, as well as setting the retention cycles on how long you want to keep these snapshots around. And as GKE and containers continues to be used for more important, very traditional enterprise class workloads, it's important to have offerings like this that essentially help you meet compliance requirements. So you can create backups for the data for inside of these containers. And we also have the ability to do pre and post hooks, so you can also get application consistent snapshots. Across the rest of our backup and archive portfolio, there's a number of other things that have been going on. In particular, last year at the end of 2020, we acquired Actifio, and it's the real centerpiece of our first-party backup investments going forward. Actifio was a Google Cloud partner and had an offering called Actifio Go in the marketplace, and we've been working on making that offering more native inside of Google Cloud to really simplify the deployment of this service, integrated billing, and of course, it leverages all the great technology Actifio had as it came into Google around incremental forevers in terms of speeding up the backups after the first one. It's really targeted, again, at these mission critical databases, SAP HANA, Oracle, MySQL, et cetera. And it's really, important for us to continue to invest in this, particularly about making it a first-class service that'll be more natively integrated into some of the higher level managed services as we go on. To round out this, I wanted to briefly mention some of the partners, just like Dave did for File. There's a number of data protection partners we work with. Two of them who've done some recent enhancements to the offerings to support Google Cloud are Veeam and Commvault. So Veeam V11, which is often used on-prem, now supports Google Cloud Storage as a backup target. So you can really think about a tape replacement use case. I would like to tell people one of the hidden gems of GCS is some of the cheaper tiers of storage have very low latency in terms of access. So you can really use these cheaper tiers to protect your data and have compliance. But if you ever need to get it back, you don't need to wait hours or days to do restores. And also, there's a new Veeam for backup for Google, V2, that just got released on the marketplace. And it also supports the archive class tiering, which again will reduce the cost for long-term retention. And lastly, Commvault has done a great job. They're a member of our marketplace, recently came onto the marketplace, and has some great capabilities, obviously well known for VMware backups, and have done some nice integration with Google Cloud VMware Engine. So again, an exciting new partnership. We're excited to work with these partners as well as others, and to provide a wide array of backup, archive, and DR solutions, both from Google and from our partner ecosystem. So to round out the session, I just wanted to talk a little bit about where to learn more information. And there's a couple other sessions here at Google Cloud Next that I think, if you're interested in this section, would be useful to look at. There's a more specific session that goes a little bit deeper into File Store Enterprise, which is something Dave mentioned. There's a wider HA and availability section that talks about a number of the capabilities, as well as some customer sessions sprinkled in throughout. So really hope you get value out of these. Included a number of links to where to find best practices and additional technical documentation, as well as some of the training and certification links on how to get more training and get certified. And one of the things that I was excited to see is that last year, the Google Cloud Professional Cloud Architect was the highest paying certification. So great, kind of career option for people to invest in themselves. And we're excited. Hopefully this session was a good overview of all the thing that is what's new with Google Cloud Storage. Enjoy the rest of the event, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you.